here on Sunrise. Back to our interview for this morning. The inputs into an entrepreneurial process include capital, management, technology, buildings, communication and transportation, infrastructure, distribution channels, and skilled labor. Entrepreneurs in rural areas practice in an environment where such infrastructure is not readily available. This, in turn, makes it difficult for rural entrepreneurs to compete and spot unconventional market opportunities. Joining us to tell us and look at the challenges still facing rural entrepreneurs and what needs to be done to develop them is Ubuntu Consulting Managing Director Gary Kurt. Remember, as always, you at home can be a part of the conversation. We're on 011-537-9337 or 9338. You can leave a comment on our Facebook and Twitter pages. Gary, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Now, let's just start it off. What are the major differences in the environments between rural entrepreneurship and obviously your urban entrepreneurs?
Sure. Okay, thanks very much for having us. I think that the major thing is that it really is about access to resources. In an urban environment, you have a good infrastructure and you have access to a lot of things that you actually need to be able to start and grow a business. And in a rural area, it obviously isn't that way. Specifically around infrastructure, if you look at the need to use technology to grow a business, if you look at internet connectivity in a rural area, it's almost non-existent. There's a lot of dead spots. So, yeah, essentially entrepreneurs in rural areas are under-resourced.
And if you look at what are the main hindrances in that regard, I mean, obviously there must be ideas. I mean, you know, someone in a rural area has a light bulb moment, sees there's really a gap in the market here. What kind of hindrances are they facing in terms of, you know, exploiting and making the most of those opportunities?
Yeah, I think that it's really about knowledge and skills. So being able to identify an opportunity initially, using creativity and innovation to spot an opportunity, and then being able to leverage that. But it really goes back to support. In terms of having a business coach or having a mentor and somebody in your corner that you can turn to and bounce ideas off to steer you in the right direction.
Now, when you look at South Africa, we're such a diverse country. We've got 11 official languages. Do you find that that could be a major factor as well in terms of not being able to communicate effectively?
I think so, essentially. But again, you know, you don't have to be, you know, fluent in English to necessarily grow or start or grow a successful business. So more around communication, you know, in how you use social media, for example, and how you present your brand. Yeah, I think that isn't necessarily a major challenge, especially from a support perspective. A lot of organizations that are working within that space teach and provide support within local language. So it's also, you know, a good thing.
Now, there obviously are stakeholders who have a role to play and have a responsibility to aid rural development. In terms of the private sector, is there much happening in terms of the private sector getting involved and supporting rural entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I think there's a lot happening within the space at the moment, both from a government and from a private sector perspective, but not necessarily enough focus on rural entrepreneurs. And I think that that is where a large part of our population live and where a lot of the challenges we face actually are. So in my opinion, there's a lot of work that actually needs to be done within that space. And as an organization, as Ubuntu Business, we've been working towards creating programs that can support entrepreneurs in rural areas. So for example, we have an agricultural entrepreneurship development program. And that program basically aims at helping people to start and grow a successful business and turning available land into a viable business venture. So really what we do is we teach 3 core modules which focus around business operations, marketing and finance, where we empower people with the theory behind business to understand how that works. We then have a 12-day Agri-CETA accredited program with one of our partners called the Kukinyenyi Relief Project, and that basically teaches people the fundamentals about agriculture and how to use permaculture design to create a sustainable garden, whether it's a household garden or a community food garden. But what makes us quite unique is that we don't just train people and leave them to implement on their own. We actually have business coaching support where we help people to firstly solve the food security problem in being able to put good nutritious food on their tables, but at the same time being able to sell surplus stock as a business venture within the community.
And when you look about, you're speaking about subsistence farming, because a lot of times in rural areas, people have all this land and don't always know what to do or how to maximize the potential of that land. So that's what you do. You can do subsistence farming, but at the same time make that a business as well. So that's what you're essentially talking about.
Exactly.
And those are all the programs that you guys are involved in.
Sure.
Okay, in terms of access to finance now, always with a business idea, there is money needed to fund it or, for it to grow. What is the access to finance for a rural entrepreneur?
Sure. So I think access to finance is obviously one of the biggest challenges, but we've been doing a national research project recently where we've been traveling around the country into all of the 9 provinces, speaking to entrepreneurs in CBDs, townships and rural areas. And when we ask what is the one thing that you need the most to be able to start or grow your business, often access to finance or funding is what comes up. But it isn't necessarily access to finance that's required. Because I always have a follow-up question to that is, how much do you actually need? A lot of time people don't know how much they need. And if they do know how much they need, they don't know exactly how they're going to use that money. So again, it goes back to understanding the financial requirements of your business. Being able to price your product correctly, being able to work out projections of how much you need to sell daily, weekly, monthly, and per year to achieve your business goals. So I think in terms of access to finance, it's not easy to access finance. Firstly, your business needs to be positioned to be able to access finance. Whether it's government, whether it's a private company that you're applying for finance, it's always based on risk. Finance is going to be granted to you on the basis of you having a high potential venture. Okay. And there's a lot of work to do before you can access the finance. And that's what we help entrepreneurs to achieve.
Now, yeah, you say there's still a lot of work to do, but in terms of what you've achieved this far, are you guys happy with how it's grown? And from a Ubuntu Consulting perspective, are you happy with where you're going? And do you see the scope for growth in the future being much bigger?
Definitely. We're working on a number of projects at the moment within the agricultural space. Working in a few different rural areas and within the urban space. So from a rural perspective, we have household food garden projects in an area called Lawley, which is just next to Lenasia. And that's basically to prove that this model works so that we can scale it. And essentially what we're trying to do is set up a food network. So a number of households that work together, again, to solve their food security issues, but to contribute to a collective market. From an urban perspective, we have a hydroponics rooftop garden on a hostel in Hillbrow. It's a project we're doing with the city of Joburg. And the project is basically to provide fresh organic produce to the food kitchen to feed homeless people. But at the same time, we've got cooperatives that we've set up that are being trained and empowered to then turn that into a business venture and sell to corporate canteens within the inner city, and obviously also to take fresh produce home to their communities.
Now, just finally, I have to ask you, purely from a mindset perspective, in your rural areas, are people open to the idea of actually starting their own business?
Yeah. So I think that goes back to entrepreneurship culture, and I think it's one of the challenges that we have currently in SA. And that really is about entrepreneurial orientation. So people haven't necessarily been exposed to best practice in entrepreneurship. And it's a mindset. So people need to be aware of the opportunity that entrepreneurship creates as a viable career option.
I think, yeah, that sums it up pretty nicely. It's all about a mindset. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. That was Ubuntu Consulting Managing Director Gary Kurtz speaking to us and looking at the challenges facing rural entrepreneurs and what needs to be done to develop them. Thank you so much. We appreciate your time. Remember, still a lot more to come through on the show. Our Your Review debate is coming through. #SA_land is where it's at. So do let us know what your thoughts are on the matter. Right now we go to an ad break, but stay tuned. A lot more to come on the show.